Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of dailydead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James. I'm joined today by Derek Anderson and Tamika Jones. Today, we're going to continue our 2010 series. We're going all the way back to 2014, as we've done in the past installments. We're going to talk about our movie picks. They may be our favorite. They may not be our favorite, but we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about memorable moments in 2014 in entertainment. We're also going to talk about memorable TV releases, video game releases, and other movies that aren't horror. Basically, it's our time to chat and reflect on the year that was 2014 in entertainment. So as we always do, I'm going to kick things off by just talking a little bit about what some of the big entertainment moments were, just to kind of set the mood and take us back. I see on April 14th, 2014... Pharrell's "Happy" was the big song. Actually, I think it was the biggest song of the year. I know you guys remember that. It was only 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like times were so different back then, though. We could talk about how happy we were, and it was all on the radio. And I was going to say all the rage, but that sounded so old of me, and now I just said it. But anyway, yeah, "Happy" took over the radio waves. And let's see what else.
That was an earworm.
Yeah, it was. It makes me happy thinking about it.
Yeah. Very light and bouncy and happy.
It's like the Lego song, like "Everything is Awesome." It just triggers everybody to be like, "Everything is awesome." But I digress. Let's see what else we had. We had Ellen hosting the Oscars. There was that momentous selfie, that big selfie that Bradley Cooper took, and Ellen was in it. Everybody made a big deal about it. Some people made a big deal about it. I don't even think I don't even think I watched those Oscars. So I tune in and out. It depends what gets nominated. I watched the year that Del Toro and Jordan Peele won, but I don't watch the Oscars as much as I used to when I was younger. When I was younger, I think this is probably the case for a lot of people. It was like you sit down with your family, you watch it, and it's a yearly tradition. You kind of have your picks. And I know people still do that, but I think some people, or maybe just me, have gotten away from that as I've gotten older.
In that year, I was doing the big Oscar party with friends, and it got to the point where we even dressed up as people who had been nominated for Oscars in the past and the characters that they played. So that was like, and we still watch the Oscars every year, but that year in particular, like, we were really into it. And I think I don't know if it was that year exactly, but I know I went as like Nicolas Cage in Leaving Las Vegas. So I just wore like a dark suit coat. I wasn't very creative.
You didn't slick your hair back.
I just want to remind people that Nicolas Cage had actually won an Oscar, because especially this was before like the Cage-assance with Mandy and some of his other recent stuff. I had to like remind people that he had done like some really critically acclaimed work before he kind of got the reputation of doing just everything. So that was, I definitely remember that selfie.
And Tamika, do you watch the Oscars?
Yes, definitely. I'm still, I guess, the last one watching.
No, I think I'm the only one without a soul, it sounds like.
No, you have a soul. No, but I remember that. And I think, was that also the year? No, I think Kimmel was hosting that year because he had pizza delivered.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So, no, it wasn't Ellen.
I think that was a Del Toro year, because wasn't he there to give the pizzas out? Wasn't it at that theater?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
So that was the year I watched.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, see, look at all these pretty people eating pizza, just like you and me.
Yeah, see, they're just like us.
Yeah.
Yes.
They enjoy the food of the people. But yeah, it's I just watched the Emmys, and it is one of those things where there's a lot of commercials, so it's almost better to just watch it after the fact. But especially last year, or I guess, in the last couple of years with horror finally getting some recognition, it's gotten to be a little more exciting for horror fans. But back like 2014, that was almost unheard of to even like have a horror movie in contention. So just the fact that we were on the cusp of like Jordan Peele getting an Oscar and Del Toro getting an Oscar, Like, who knew that we were just years away from that? Even though I guess when it comes to horror fans, we're kind of used to it, so it doesn't really matter per se. But it's nice to get that recognition for the genre, get a little credit where it's due.
Yeah, no, I never. I guess I was gonna say I never get used to it. We'll fight for those Oscars. It's like Toni Collette not getting nominated for Hereditary. Like, it's crazy.
That still hurts.
Yeah, exactly. We feel the pain every year.
She crawled on a wall, for crying out loud.
So, moving out of the Oscars and into summer of 2014 was the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh my gosh!
So that started in summer of 2014.
That was for a good cause, but it got so out of control to the point where everybody, it just seemed like it didn't go away. Like, something viral, you expect it to be around for a couple of days and then it's on to the next thing. For some reason, this just seemed to literally last the entire summer. And again, it's for a good cause. Like, I love that part of it, but it just seemed to get so crazy how that just would not die. Like, it just kept going and going.
Yeah, well, it's a challenge thing. It's because I challenge you, and then it's a chain letter effect. So it was a smart way to bring to bring awareness to their cause.
Definitely.
But also a lot of crazy videos. We had that this year with it was like the hitting or kicking the bottle cap challenge.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A little higher difficulty level on that one.
A little bit.
But yeah, it's fun to see like Jason Statham do a wheel kick, do a round kick, and hit the bottle cap off. So a little more variety there.
Yeah, I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. So I did it, but I did a plastic bottle because I didn't want to do a glass one and like shatter my dad's hands. But I saw the video. I'm like, I got to do it. So we got a water bottle and did it.
Really?
Nice.
And where can Daily or Corpse Club listeners go to see this footage?
It's only a legend. I don't think we recorded it.
What?
Yeah, I wasn't going to put it online.
Recorded?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could do it. It wasn't even a see. I was like, I could do this. So
it's not about the fame with you.
Yeah. Even though it was like, no, I don't believe him. He didn't do it. So anyway, so we had challenges. That was the big thing in summer of 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy just shattered expectations on August 1st, 2014 when it opened in theaters.
Wow.
And, coming from James Gunn, who, basically, had a horror background. And this was the huge, I mean, obviously there have been a lot of gambles for Marvel Studios. Bringing everybody together for the Avengers was one. But I think Guardians of the Galaxy was really, the big proving ground. It was like, hey, like you did good with Captain America and Thor and heroes people know. Can you actually do it in, with these characters basically nobody's ever heard of, with a director very few people have heard of, and put it in space and try to, launch Marvel's like cosmic arena. And obviously we know where we are now. So, so 2014, those are some of the pop culture highlights. I'm sure there's more. But this isn't about pop culture. This is about horror. And so I want to talk about 2014 horror movie releases. Thank you to Derek for compiling this list, because without it, it's, as I mentioned, some movies, it shows on Google that they're from 2014. Like, I was so excited. I'm like, What We Do in the Shadows. Oh, yeah, I can talk about it this episode. And I'm talking about it right now, but I can't continue to talk about it because it came out in 2015. And so, anyway, but things that did come out in 2014 include Deliver Us from Evil, Housebound, excuse me, Starry Eyes, Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones, A Girl Walks Home Alone, Ouija, The Quiet Ones, Dead Snow 2, Late Phases, Dracula Untold, Life After Beth, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, I, Frankenstein, The Guest, Cabin Fever 3, and Stage Fright. The movies we're talking about are not those movies. So we're going to do what we did last time, and we're each going to pick a title, talk about it, and like I said, and we'll kind of weave in and out other entertainment discussions from the year 2014. So Derek, this is your feature series or your podcast series you want to kick off. So I'll have you start it. What's your first 2014 horror movie pick?
Well, if we didn't lose any listeners that were super psyched about that long list of movies you just mentioned, I hope if you stuck around, we're going to talk Conjuring universe, because 2014 saw the release of the first Conjuring spinoff movie, Annabelle. And this is one that I hadn't seen. I think I hadn't seen this since I saw it in theaters back in 2014. Literally just revisited it this evening before recording, and I really, really dug it, like a lot more than I remember digging it the first time around. It's directed by John R. Leonetti, who had done a lot of cinematography work prior to this. He'd also directed a little bit. He did Mortal Kombat Annihilation. He did The Butterfly Effect 2. And then Annabelle saw him return to the director's chair, but he had worked with James Wan on The Conjuring and Insidious Chapter 2. So he's very familiar with that universe. And this is the one where it kind of starts to explain the mythology of these characters from the Conjuring movies that we're introduced to. So I think it's really influential in the fact that it took a character from a Conjuring movie and then just totally spun off another franchise for it. And that is a pattern that has been repeated many times since, based on the success of this movie. It made a ton of money at the box office. On like a $6.5 million budget, it raked in over $250 million. And that there was really no looking back after that. It really created like this new Conjuring template that they've done with the Nun and perhaps the Crooked Man and maybe the Bride or some other characters in the future. Every Conjuring movie, we've seen all these different characters introduced as villains, and then it seems like whichever ones test the best with audiences get their own movies. And of course, Annabelle is so iconic, and I feel like this is such a great showcase for the doll. I forgot how like mean-spirited this movie is and how freaking scary it is too. Just rewatching it, I was kind of jumping out of my chair a little bit because I really forgot how good the jump scares are in this movie. And it's kind of like James Wan. Leonetti is really good at giving you that scare when you think things have like died down. And there's so much going on in the background. Like a lot of Conjuring movies, it's what's going on in the background where you really have to pay attention. And so I think it really nailed it checks every box of like what makes a really good Conjuring like James Wan movie. And I think because it was so successful, it really paved the way for the rest of the Conjuring franchise. Like if this had done badly, I don't know if we get The Nun or I don't know if we get two more Annabelle movies. So I think as historic as The Conjuring was when that came out in 2013, Annabelle coming out the next year and doing really, really well has had a huge impact on the genre and kind of the rest of the decade when it comes to horror in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it there. I mean, James Wan, or I'd say The Conjuring The Conjuring was a fantastic movie, but you know, Annabelle kind of launched the franchise or proved the universe concept. James Wan is just incredible at putting such of a depth into his movies. Even with something like Dead Silence, we know that it could have continued on.
Yeah.
And so obviously it wasn't as successful, and we find out, I mean, that's what happens when the box office isn't what it is. But yeah, thanks to this, I mean, yeah, we have, you know, this proved that it's not just one movie, or it's not just a series of Conjuring movies, that you can take an element that is incredibly scary in the first movie and spin it off. Certainly not my favorite film of the Conjuring universe, but a very important one, and still fun and scary. It was fun when we saw it in theaters.
And another reason this is so important too is that this was written by Gary Dauberman, who had only co-written one other feature film prior to this. So Gary comes out of nowhere to write this screenplay, and ever since then, there's no looking back for him. He went on to write Annabelle Creation and co-write it, and then write It Chapter 2 and The Nun, and now he directed Annabelle Comes Home. So he's gone on to become like one of the chief architects of this franchise, and this was a huge moment for him. and kind of the springboard for his entire career. And now he's one of the most influential people working in horror. So I think it's really interesting. I'd love to know like how he got involved with it. I'd really love to know that story, because he really came out of nowhere to write the screenplay for this. And I think he did a really good job. I love how Annabelle, this is like the most active Annabelle is, I think, in any of the movies. Like, of course, it's the demon, this demon that's working through Annabelle, but the doll itself seems to move. Like, we get more of a Chucky sense from Annabelle in this movie, and I forgot about that because it seems like the other movies they never really show. They kind of excel in never showing her move, and this one actually plays with that a little bit. And we see like the demon actually manipulating the doll, like when it rises up by the window. And so and then the rocking chair, like there's more of a sense of movement. Like Annabelle seems more alive in this movie than any of the others to me. And if you haven't rewatched it in a while, I'd really suggest going back, because I was really surprised, because my friend Charlie and we always talk about these movies, and he recently rewatched Annabelle, and he was never really a big fan of it. Like, it was his least favorite in the Conjuring franchise. Now it's like his favorite Annabelle movie. And I have to say, this is right up there with me too. It totally jumped that rankings that we did recently, those rankings of the Conjuring movies. It's jumped up a couple notches just from rewatching it. So it seems to have aged well.
Yeah, I was saying, it's funny what 5 years, how 5 years makes a difference. Tamika, have you seen this one? What do you think?
I've been trying to just enjoy the conversation and try to figure out if we saw the same movie.
Oh, that's so harsh.
I'm so sorry. And then that's when it happened. I realized, oh no, I have to be the odd man out.
No, it's okay. That's why we're here. So yeah. What are your thoughts about it?
I agree with you guys for sure that there are some really cool moments, some scares that, because normally I don't like jump scares unless it's done really, really well. And it's not just, like a cat jumping out of nowhere or something in your face,
Yeah, the false scare.
Yes. And I absolutely. There's the cult, like the girl with and she joins the cult. It's basically like like the Manson cult. If I guess obviously they can't call them that, but that's basically, I guess, what they're supposed to be.
The disciples of the Ram. But yeah, basically a Manson.
Like a Manson family-esque type of cult. And that just still sticks with me. I didn't see any of that coming. I didn't think that they were going to try to weave in anything that kind of remotely resembled something from life that we experience, like in, real world situations. And there's a few moments towards the end when I cannot think of her name. It's the character name. It's escaping me right now. But the lady goes downstairs, like in the basement, because that's always scary. Basements are always scary, and the lights kept flickering on and off. And I just thought, oh, help me, something crazy is about to happen here. And it does. And it was just so perfectly timed. I really appreciated those moments. But as outside of that, the movie is just really boring. And the couple is boring. And I just thought, help me. Are we going to is this going to we're going to have maybe 10 minutes with them, and then we're going to move on and with someone else? Or we're going to jump in time? Please, something happen. Please. But unfortunately, we're stuck with them. And I understand why. I get that this is trying to set up a whole world, and it's trying to explain Annabelle's origins. And I completely understand that. But I just would have preferred to maybe live with other people. Perhaps.
I definitely agree that they don't have anything on the Warrens, like when it comes to entertaining family. I can definitely see that. because it's not. The Conjuring is such a tough act to follow when it comes to the characters that it's almost like it's a little more slowed down in this one compared to what they're doing in the previous movie. So maybe it was Warren. Maybe we needed like a little cameo from the Warrens or something like that.
Something, they
or
don't
less sewing scenes
have
or
much
something.
personality.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that across a lot of the Conjuring films, that is, one of the deficiencies is that they don't have characters that necessarily. I mean, certainly they've brought in high caliber actors, but they don't seem to have characters that seem to gel as well as the Warrens do. I think they're totally capable of it. It just feels like these stories have had a lot of throwaway families.
Yes. Oh, come to the dark side, you two.
I'm always somewhere in the middle. I'm not a Sith. I'm not a follower of the Force. It's I walk the middle area. I'm more Mace Windu.
Okay.
So he might pretend that he's a Jedi, but he's not a Jedi.
Oh,
we're gonna get some fan mail here now.
I mean, I know we're jumping right into this, but you guys saw Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Like Mace Windu was totally like he was happy to like fight people and chop people's heads off and attack the Emperor. I mean, come on, like
He took pleasure.
Yeah, it's interesting
trying to arrest the Emperor.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously in the original trilogy, the Jedi weren't as like celibate, I guess. But then when you get to the prequels, it's like, well, we can't have sex and we can't do this and we can't have these kinds of emotions, and so it kind of really put them on like very polar opposite sides. Anyway, as this applies to the Conjuring universe, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm more Mace Windu.
That would have been a good blurb for the movie.
Yeah. Anyway, this is what happens when we record late at night. It's not back to back. We recorded yesterday as well, but this is what you get. This is what you get when I'm leading discussion.
Little Star Wars spinoff.
Yeah, a little Star Wars. And I kept saying Force. I couldn't think of the word Jedi in the beginning as well. I want to slap myself. Anyway, let's move on. We have plenty of movies to get through. Sometimes these episodes take us 2 hours. We could be here 3 or 4. Everyone's like, oh my god. But no, we're gonna move at a decent pace as we move on to Tamika and her first pick.
The Babadook. Yes. Jennifer Kent. I gotta be honest. I try not to watch pardon me. I try not to watch trailers or like clips from movies because I want to just completely throw myself into it. And I completely threw myself into this movie. I didn't know anything. I hadn't seen anything. I knew that it was, I believe, filmed in South Australia, and so that had intrigued me. I really don't get to watch too many Australian horror films. I'm trying to broaden my horizons. Especially at this point back in 2014, I discovered a lot of stuff, a lot of French horror and Korean horror. And I thought, ooh, okay, let me try the Babadook. And I just loved every bit of it. Looking back on it now, I'm not entirely sure there are definitely horrifying moments in the film, but to me, I'm starting to see it more of as a drama, I guess, because you have this mother and her son, and I'm not going to tell you what happens to them, but they're in mourning, and they're just trying to hash out their pain, and you get to see how they each deal with that pain, and that pain manifests into something else, and it's called The Babadook, which I believe is based on a character because the mom she writes children's stories. So I think The Babadook is something from one of her stories. this like shadowy figure. And I just love it so, so much. And I always recommend it to people who I think, I don't know, I want them to dip a toe into horror. I don't want to toss them like way, way into the deep end. So I just want to give them something they can wrap their heads around. Maybe they can relate to something that's more psychologically horrifying and just so beautifully shot and directed and acted. There's this one line for some reason that, like, whenever someone throws like a temper tantrum, I always quote this line from The Son where he says, because he's talking about his mom, and she won't let him like do something because he's acting out at school, and he says, she won't let me have a birthday, and she won't let me have a dad. Like, I have no idea why that line sticks in my mind, but it does. And there's just so much that I could say about the movie, but I'm done for now.
Have you seen it, Derek?
Oh, yes, okay. I have seen it. It's another one I want to revisit because I haven't seen it since probably like 2015 when IFC Midnight released it on Blu-ray. So, yeah, it's been a while and I need to rewatch it, but I do remember it very vividly. And it definitely, like, when you think of iconic horror movies from the 2010s, you have to think of the Babadook at some point. I mean, it's certainly one of the more iconic villains in a horror movie, and it's really haunting because it's like you said, it's this children's book character that seems kind of innocent at first and then completely does a 180. And then on top of that, you have that psychological drama aspect of it, like you were mentioning, where it is really about these relationships, but then also that other layer of what is real and what isn't real. And there's so many just complex things going on in this narrative that it's one of those movies that everyone can come away with it thinking that something else happened. So you can have these discussions about what you think really happened. And I love movies like that. And I think S.C. Davis, her performance as the mom is so good because she's not a perfect parent. And I think that's really refreshing to see. Like she's doing a really good job raising this kid, but there are days where she gets really annoyed by this son. And I know, I remember like you and Heather talking about this on a previous episode about the Babadook, and how I know Heather just brings up how annoying that boy is. He's like, he really gets under your skin sometimes. And it kind of happens to the mom too, where she just gets so fed up. And I think it's really relatable that they were able to bring those realistic characters into it. And then of course, the movie's kind of had another life of its own now that Mr. Babadook has become like this symbol for the LGBT community. So it's really interesting, like how it's kind of lived. It's really cool how it's like has all these different meanings to different people. And who knew that would happen when the movie came out in 2014? So it's pretty amazing what this movie has done and what it's meant to people. And I always think of Christmas, strangely, when I think of this movie, because it came out in the US in late November of 2014. And I think IFC Midnight released like a motion activated like Christmas card, like something you could put on the website, and you would see this like Babadook Christmas card come to life. And that was my first holiday season with Daily Dead. So I remember doing a post on that and thinking like, how cool is this that they brought Babadook into Christmas? Like they were going to do like a little Christmas special. So it's pretty amazing, like how many different lives this movie has had in this decade. And Jennifer Kent recently returned with her follow-up film, The Nightingale. So I know people after the Babadook, people were waiting to see what she would do next. And I haven't seen The Nightingale, but I've heard really good things about it. And I think she's definitely one of those filmmakers. When you think of the 2010s, you kind of have to think of Jennifer Kent based on this movie and what it's kind of done in pop culture over the last like 5 or 6 years.
I mean, yeah, it's, I mean, when we look at movies of the 2010s, this is one of the standouts. I mean, I would say, I would say it was probably the biggest, maybe the biggest horror surprise of 2014. I think it had that appeal outside of just horror fans. This is when we started to hear elevated horror, which, a lot of people, myself included, can't stand, because all horror is technically is elevated. And if you call something elevated, it kind of diminishes other horror movies and kind of the work and skill that goes into it. But I think that, kind of to Tamika's point, this is a movie that I guess is accessible to different types of people. And I say this all the time on Corpse Club. It's okay for a movie to be a drama and a horror movie and whatever. Like, we can classify it multiple ways. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's interesting that when a movie starts to do well or get critical praise, that people want to take it out of horror. Like, no, it's horror, but like I said, it's also all these other great things. I might get a little spoilery, so I'll just throw up the spoiler tag. You want to skip ahead if you haven't seen this? Skip ahead a few minutes, and I should be done.
Go in there.
Yeah, Tamika, you weren't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I mean, what I really like about this is that the Babadook is the manifestation of this mother's pain and illness, and it does such a great job of kind of masking that. It doesn't hit you over the head with like, this is like, there's subtext here, and I think those are some, in a lot of ways, the best kind of movies. To the point where, we had people asking about sequels and like, oh, the Babadook show up at somebody else's house. And, they were asking, about that. And it's like, well, no, that's not going to happen, because, this story it's unique to the, to the family, to this mom and her son. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's not this, it's not like Pinhead where he can show up everywhere. This is their manifestation. And, and for people that don't want to dig deeper, it's like I said, it's a great horror story for people that are looking for more about what the story's telling. Like I said, I think there's a lot there to dive into, similar to what we have, with the discussion going on these days for Us and Midsummer and Hereditary. Again, we talk about, because we are doing a retro here, right? We're talking about what a difference 5 years makes. I mean, people were talking about the Babadook online, but it didn't film Twitter and horror Twitter were not as that community wasn't as big 5 years ago. And so the discussions, the think pieces, all that, we didn't see as many for the Babadook. So it's interesting to see, like I said, what a difference, like I said, 5 years makes, where, again, streaming was still kind of just getting big. It went out through IFC Midnight. It had a smaller release, but, thankfully, due to, like I said, streaming services, I think it was on Netflix for quite a while. So I think that kind of helped keep it alive and keep people seeing it. Whereas some of the other movies we had discussed in past installments of the 2010s, like, they didn't get as lucky. Like, they were at the very start of the 2010s and before streaming really caught on, and they kind of like have been a little forgotten. But anyway, great pick, Tamika.
Thanks.
Yeah, Derek, I didn't say great pick for yours.
Whoa.
The great pick.
That's just because we haven't had a crossover between Annabelle and the Babadook where they can hash it out and let fans decide, like a Freddy versus Jason style matchup, who is the ultimate icon. But that'd be very hard because you can't really show Annabelle moves. So
right, yeah.
And the Babadook might not be real, so it's a very psychological crossover.
It could be done. Could be called, oh god, the Annabook.
Oh my god,
Hollywood, if you're listening.
I love your fictional crossovers. It's like what you had the Ma sequel where it crosses over with Halloween. If we do enough episodes, you'll have a whole franchise of these crossovers.
Yes. Halloween.
Yep.
Halloween.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, you guys.
But kill, yeah, love it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna move on to my pick. My first pick is As Above, So Below, a criminally underseen horror movie that came out in late August. We know sometimes that's kind of when studios would, kind of drop their movies off that they didn't think were going to do as well. This one, I mean, it actually seemed to do pretty well, yeah, which is, it sets up. Excuse me, it was going to set up a franchise, and whether it was just because Legendary decided to go a different way in terms of their investments into other movies. We know there were some horror movies that they were working on, like they had announced Trick or Treat 2. That didn't happen. So I think they had plans to kind of invest more in horror, and that didn't end up happening. But we got this one, and it's an incredibly fun horror movie. I think what turned people off maybe initially is that it is kind of like it is like the found footage style. So you get a lot of that. You get a lot of those tropes that you'd expect. But they handle the story in an interesting way, because it is horror, but like I said, it is also like part Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider. So you get this like really good mix that's fun throughout. None of the scenes like overstay their welcome. So it's just like one creative thing to the next. It's like we're stuck in the we're stuck in the catacombs, and then they kind of like Blair Witch style get lost, and then it like a Descent style. There's claustrophobia. Then we get into more supernatural stuff that I'm not going to go into. But I think the movie is just fun, and there are some legitimately good scares in this movie. I just had a lot of fun with it. And I've actually, we have our revisit drinking game that we're starting, because every time we say revisit, it really means in most cases we're not going to see it again, because we have so many movies to see. But I actually have revisited this movie. This is one of the few that I saw in theaters, and then I've seen it at least another 2 or 3 times. And it holds up. So I like I said, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think a lot of people slept on it, and I think it still holds up today. So rent it.
Yeah, rent it.
Why exactly do you think that? Like, why do you think it got slept on at the time?
It didn't have really major stars to kind of anchor this. It was coming out from Legendary, as I had mentioned, and I mean they're the same people that are putting out the Dark Knight movies, and they did Crimson Peak as well. Crimson Peak was a really big budget for them, and they kind of it didn't do well for them, but they kind of anchored it around, like I said, these stars that would kind of bring people in. And that's for a lot of the big theatrical releases, or the studio mentality before, right? Blumhouse and a lot of these like I said, and horror movies really are what have kind of changed the scenery, which is like, we can make a movie for $2 million and it'll gross $100 million. And if you're a studio that knows how to do that the right way, then great. And more do these days. But I think back then they kind of applied like a traditional marketing method to this movie, and it kind of doesn't work. And so I think that was kind of the problem. Also, again, it's pitching that found footage style, and found footage had kind of, it had overstayed its welcome. I think around, or probably around 2014, we had seen just, ever since, Blair Witch, just a steady stream, and a lot of them just are not good. So I think horror fans will be like, okay, well, this is found footage, and then like kind of tune out. So I think that's kind of part of the problem as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of unfortunate.
I'm one of those people too that will go to bat for this movie, get hit by a pitch for this movie, and et cetera, because this made my favorites list for 2014. It was one of my favorite movie-going experiences of the 2010s. I just had an absolute blast watching this. And I was a big fan of John Eric Dowdle, the director, and his brother, Drew Dowdle, who he co-wrote the screenplay with. They're actually from the Twin Cities. So they have that Minnesota blood. We've got that connection there. And so it's really fun to see them still doing really good work. Before this, they had done Quarantine, which was the American remake of Wreck, and another found footage movie. So that came out in like 2008. And I think I really love both Wreck and Quarantine. So I thought they were perfect for that found footage horror storytelling. So I think they had that experience going into it. So they already kind of knew what they were doing when it came to found footage. And I think they really just perfected the formula with this movie. And like you said, it's like an adventure horror film, which we get so rarely these days. It has like a little bit of the Mummy, and I'm talking about Brandon Fraser Mummy, just so we don't mix that up. And it was so good. And the way they filmed it, like the catacombs, the whole production design and where they filmed it was so atmospheric that you felt like you were really there with them. And it's this real life place too that they're exploring. So it has all this history there already in the story, and them just kind of tweaking things a little bit and making their own nightmare out of it, I think is really intriguing. And it was so much fun. I just loved, like you said, the different kinds of horror, and some of it very unexpected. And the characters, Edwin Hodge was in this, and he was coming off of The Purge in 2013. And it was in another big horror movie in 2014. So it did have some kind of up and comers when it came to the cast, but like you said, not really anybody recognizable necessarily when it came to big names. But I think that kind of benefits the story as well.
Okay, so I definitely remember really enjoying this movie when I saw it in theaters, but I never revisited it, and I'm not really sure why. So, but I definitely remember being really creeped out by this movie because I'm not entirely sure when The Descent came out, but I remember seeing that and being just totally freaked out by caves in general and just utter darkness and tight spaces. And so this movie reminded me of that, and it brought back all of those feelings. So I definitely am definitely going to go back and rewatch this because I see that I can watch it on YouTube and it's only like $2. So I'm going to definitely rent this probably tomorrow. But yeah, I don't know why this wasn't initially on my radar, because this seems like something I would have really enjoyed, and like my friends that I had at the time would have enjoyed, but I don't remember anyone really talking about this movie. So I guess it kind of goes back to what Jonathan was saying, that maybe it was just weird marketing. Like, just maybe it was the way the trailer was cut, or maybe, I don't know, maybe people were over the found footage thing. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, this is a really good pick.
Thank you.
And that would make a really good. That'd make a good double bill: The Descent and As Above, So Below.
Yeah,
right.
I'd line up for that.
Or in The Cave. Did you guys see The Cave? It's also kind of like The Descent.
I never did see The Cave, but I remember the commercials for it and thinking that looks pretty cool.
I don't think I saw that, but I think I did see it when I was looking at the 2013 movie list. I do think there's a movie called The Pyramid or something like that. We did see that. Christy and I saw it.
Pyramid.
Oh, that was also 2014.
Yeah, that's
actually.
what I'm saying. That was a found footage in a pyramid. It wasn't as good.
Oh yeah,
but we saw it.
And yeah, so another kind of like adventure style horror film with the Mummy vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the thing right around 2014, 2013.
And I love that style of horror film. So I definitely don't mind seeing more of that, like a little more Temple of Doom vibe with some of these horror movies. And I'd like to see more with the Dowdles too. Like, they did a really cool movie called No Escape after As Above, So Below, which came out, I believe, in 2015. And that was another really intense movie that was basically like just a total thrill ride from start to finish kind of movie, a little less horror, but definitely very intense. And then they've done the Waco miniseries recently, but I'd love to see them do more horror. I think they really have a good eye for it.
Wait, what was the name of the miniseries?
Yeah.
Oh, Waco.
I'm sorry.
Waco?
Is it Wacko? I don't know what it is. I'm just asking.
No, it's the real life story of the cult.
So it's Waco?
Waco.
Oh,
yes.
Waco. Oh, okay.
Excuse my pronunciation.
I'm
As
sorry.
longtime listeners they know
they
that
know
I
what
have
they get. They know what they get with you, Derek. So and we love it. But sometimes, like what did he just say?
I keep you guessing. That's what you're saying.
It did sound like something that Fozzie would say from the Muppets. Oh, okay.
Oh my God.
So let's move on because we're moving through 2014. We got 3 movies in. We're going to Hot 100 songs. What are our 2014 big songs? I already said Happy was number 1. And Dark Horse from Katy Perry was number 2.
Oh, yes. Yeah, with the I always think of that song as like the demon voice song because it's very, you have the Katy Perry voice and then they, with that little hook where it goes, there's no going back. It just gets really...
Wait, one more time, Derek. What do they say?
There's no going back.
I just wanted to hear it again. Like
it just feels like an exorcism song to me.
Yeah.
Exorcism song.
I'm never gonna. Not that I listen to this song because I was gonna say I'll never think of it the same way, but I never listen to this song. But if I hear it on the radio, Derek, I will think of you. We had John Legend's "All of Me."
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We had Fancy from Iggy Azalea. That song was huge.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
You still hear that one in like commercials and trailers today.
Yeah.
That is true.
Meghan Trainor, All About That Bass. Sam Smith, Stay With Me. Pitbull and Kesha, Timber. Taylor Swift, Shake It Off.
That was 2014. That feels like it was 2 years ago.
I mean, you made me doubt myself for a second. I'm like, oh my God, did I go? No, it's 2014.
Really?
Yeah, the Monster, Eminem featuring Rihanna. I mean, this isn't that far back. Lorde and her song Team. Royals from Lorde. Passenger,
that was the
Let
year
Her
Lorde
Go.
really blew up.
Yeah. So anyway, that's 2014. That's what Billboard's telling me. I believe them. But yeah, that was 5 years ago.
That's the weird thing about it is like you think of some of these songs as just coming out yesterday. And I know relatively it wasn't that long ago, but it was still on that first half of the decade. And now we're at the end of the decade. So it's really weird to think of 2014 as being like more than 2 years ago to me.
It's going to be weird though when we get to 2017. We're like, oh my God, was that 2 years ago? Like, oh, that was so far.
Yeah, that is true. 2017 and 2018 kind of like melted together for me. It just felt like it was just one big year for some reason. Maybe it was because there was so much horror, and then it just felt like it never stopped.
Yeah, we've been running for the last few years. It has been nonstop.
Like if you think about it, 2014, it was still like horror was really taking off. Like we were starting to see like the Conjuring movies and the Purge movies, and like horror was getting more popular year round, but it was still like there were still little patterns like in the release schedules, and streaming services like weren't fully up and running or weren't doing as many horror projects as they are now. So it felt like there was a little more like seasonal horror in 2014. And then it like when we got to like 2016, 2017, there was just no looking back. Like it was full on like year-long horror, which is great, but it's just amazing like how that happened.
Another big movie in 2014 was Edge of Tomorrow. We were talking about how, marketing kind of, can hurt a movie. I mean, marketing didn't stop this movie from gaining popularity. It's something with a title change. Like this thing is Edge of Tomorrow officially, but, when they were advertising it, even, I don't know if it's still that way, but before when you used to search on Amazon, it would be Live, Die, Repeat, which is kind of what they used. It was the tagline for the movie, but it ended up being the name of the movie pretty much. The de facto name. And then I can't remember what it was supposed to be before that because it was based on manga, and I can't recall the title. Tamika, do you know it?
I think it was called All You Need Is Kill.
Ah, yes, that's it.
Yes.
So
that's a really cool title too. They could have just done that.
Yeah, but they thought it was going to be too what do you call it? Too controversial, I guess. But I had a lot of fun with that movie. Yeah, I mean, it uses a familiar concept, but just it done in a fun way, and it was a good summer movie.
And that was another one that they kept talking about doing a sequel to it. But at the same time, like, it's so special on its own that I don't really know if you could do a sequel and have it still be as entertaining and like Groundhog Day-esque as this one is.
Yeah, I'm good without a sequel. I don't think we need one. It's yeah. What were you gonna say?
If they were gonna do it, like, it seems like with a lot of the sequels, when the longer they wait in between, it just doesn't have that same urgency to it. So like if they had done one like the next year and it made sense, maybe.
It's like Independence Day. And then that thing just it keeps pushing forward. And then by the time it comes out, it's like, this movie feels really dated. I can't believe they made an Independence Day sequel. I can't believe that movie came out.
It was all a dream.
Yeah. And yeah, anyway, that's all I got. I'm not gonna go into Independence Day too.
We'll save that for another episode in 2010s.
Yeah, we will. And then we had Interstellar. We had Captain America: The Winter Soldier. We had X-Men: Days of Future Past. Nightcrawler. What else do we have? The Lego Movie. I mentioned the Lego Movie, and I didn't even realize it was in this year. Everything is awesome. We had Lucy, Birdman, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the RoboCop reboot, 300: Rise of an Empire, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. There were a lot of movies.
Wow. Yeah, that was a big year for cinema.
Yeah.
And a lot of genre movies, maybe not necessarily horror, but some really big superhero movies. And I remember that Oscar year very well because like Birdman was really big, and there's just a lot of like really big films that seemed like it was a crowded cinema year, which was really good for people that wanted to go out during the holidays and just watch a ton of movies. So that's really interesting. I forgot that like half of those movies came out in 2014.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like as we see, it's interesting, like I said, going year to year, just seeing how much content is just out there, and how rapidly it increases over not so long of a period of time. But anyway, it's time for us to get back to some horror movies. Let's see. Derek, we'll go back to you. What's your second pick for 2014 horror?
All right. My second pick is going to be part of a franchise. I know Annabelle had the Conjuring universe connection. This one is a direct sequel to a movie that came out in 2013, and that is The Purge: Anarchy. So we are looking at a movie that is probably arguably the best received in the franchise. I know a lot of people have some issues with the first Purge, or actually I shouldn't say that. That's the fourth movie in the franchise. I'm talking about The Purge, like the actual first Purge. So we're at this point where I have to really be careful with the titles here.
Yeah, how dare you? You say Purge 1.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
That's going to be the name of the new Purge movie, though.
Just to make it like three movies that could technically be the first Purge, but we're not really sure what you're referring to.
Well, it's like Xbox One. I mean, it's a third Xbox. What's going on there?
Yeah, just call it Xbox 3. Like, don't be ashamed of your sequel status.
Yeah.
You know, you are what you are. So it's funny because I just rewatched The Purge and The Purge Anarchy. My sister and brother-in-law hadn't seen them before, and it had been a long time since I had seen them. Kind of one of those things where I had not seen them since they came out. So it was really fun to rewatch it. And watching the Purge, there was a lot of stuff that I enjoyed, but I also felt like, man, there's some missed opportunities in there. And I think a lot of people expected the Purge from 2013 to be more like the Purge Anarchy, where we're stepping outside of the house and we're seeing what's going on in the city and what does like the whole world look like at that time. And so as much as I do enjoy a lot of the home invasion stuff in The Purge, I think The Purge Anarchy is like a much more complete Purge movie, and it really embodies what the franchise is. And I think it really set the standard for everything that came after it. And it's definitely got that Escape from New York vibe to it. It's showing you kind of these different groups of purgers that work together. And it's got a great performance from Frank Grillo. So I think, do you guys agree that this is like the kind of the most well-regarded Purge movie? Like that this is the epitome of the franchise, or do you have another favorite one? Because to me, when I think The Purge, I feel like a lot of people think Anarchy first.
Tamika, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, interestingly enough, I think it's the best Purge film out of like the four. And I think it's because it found its stride. Like it knew what it wanted to say, and it started to branch out and explain things. And I really enjoy the characters. We were discussing characters, the importance of characters in Annabelle, right? Earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that Frank Grillo, he's so good in everything I've seen him in. And he just totally leads this movie. And I even because I rewatched this, it was on TNT a few weeks ago, and I even caught a younger Lakeith Stanfield
Yeah.
from Atlanta and Death Note. He was in Get Out. He's the one with the mask that says God on the forehead that kidnaps the couple. Like he's waiting for them outside of the grocery store. Or no, he doesn't kidnap them then, but like that's the first time I think he and the couple meet.
Right. Yeah. Cause they're kind of like tailing after them for a while.
Yeah. And
yeah, that was a surprise because I didn't realize that until watching it like now and then being like, oh, that's him. That's really cool.
I know. It's like, is that? That's exciting.
And it's one of the more iconic like Purge costumes in the franchise,
Yes.
that mask, because it really is like you're playing God in a lot of ways. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it started to really cement itself. It's interesting how people don't really think that the movies are political, or at least not in the beginning.
Wait, what?
Election year?
Wait, what?
Yeah, I remember that back then. I remember people like didn't really see them as that. Like even though there's a government that implements the purge and all of that, there was never really a focus on that. I noticed that now with the first purge that came out, I believe last year, people are now starting to connect like the political stuff. Like the political side of the movie?
I don't know. On my
too.
side of things, I mean, that's maybe not with the first one where it was more of a home invasion film, but for me, I've kind of seen a lot of that like discussion or connection ever since Anarchy.
Interesting.
But it could have been, it could be me, but yeah, like I said, I think it just, in some cases it's different. What do you call it? Different parts of the country. But yeah, I think, I think it's been, I don't know. I think that connection's kind of been pretty big since Anarchy. But yeah, I also understand. I do recall, though, that there was maybe more press or more discussion by people who weren't necessarily fans of the series when it came to the first Purge. So maybe it had intensified by the time we got to the first Purge. And by the first Purge, I mean the latest Purge.
Right. Yeah, that's confusing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I'm with the two of you. I love Purge Anarchy. It's like they dropped the Punisher in the middle of the Purge. I was down for it. So so no complaints on that one. Yeah,
and Grillo's has that armored black car that kind of is like his own Batmobile in this. And I love too that there's a character named Big Daddy, because I think that Nicolas Cage's character Big Daddy from Kick-Ass was made for the Purge universe. Like it's exactly what he does in Kick-Ass. So I feel like that would be, it's a weird connection, but I always just think of that because I'm like, oh, he would be so at home in this world where he could just go and kind of do what some people do on Purge, which is go after like criminals and people that are predators and that kind of thing. So it's, but yeah, I think it, like I said, the characters are really great. They'd opened up the world of the Purge. And I think this is what people really expected with such a great concept that James DeMonico came up with. And I think based on the success of this, it made that franchise last as long as it has, where now we're at the end of the decade and there's a Purge TV series that is entering its second season. And there's a fifth Purge movie in the works, and there's like so many things that you can say about America with these movies and all these different layers that they can explore. And it's a very interesting time to kind of have a movie like that come out. So I'm curious like what direction the franchise will go in the future. But I think as much as the Purge like set the foundation for the franchise, I think the Purge Anarchy just like set the standard for everything that came after it. So it's and it holds up well. So it's fun to revisit. It's disturbing, but it's fun to revisit.
Good pick, Derek.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I get it from you this time. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
But no love for Annabelle.
I mean,
Okay.
I've told you before. I mean, like I enjoyed it when I saw it in the theater, but I'm going more towards Tamika's side on that one. But actually, Tamika, I can't help you with your next pick, which you're going to tell us about right now.
I'm gonna make up for. It's okay, Derek, because I'm about to join you. Gonna join you when I toss Kevin Smith's. Let's say interesting, possibly bizarre, but fun to watch, at least in the beginning. Tusk, as we recall, Tusk came out in 2014. We have this wild cameo. Well, no, I need people to see this movie. Even if you hate me after, it's okay. I just need you to see this at least the one time. There's this bizarre cameo from Johnny Depp in it. We have Justin Long. I know him from Accepted, Comedy Gold, Accepted.
Oh,
and,
yes.
yes.
That is fun.
He goes to Canada to interview this guy who's just like, he reminds me of kind of like the Dos Equis guy. He's like a man of, and he discovers this like that he has this like human walrus type creature, and it just I'm trying not to swear. It goes downhill after that. Well, actually, it goes downhill before that, but you get where I'm going with this. Oh, Tusk. Oh,
2 movies in one.
Yeah, did you guys know that? Because I was doing a little bit of research on this movie earlier, and it's a part of a trilogy. Do you guys remember that movie, Yoga Hosers?
That's the second part of this trilogy. It says,
yes.
I forgot what the exact phrasing was, but essentially Canadian film trilogy.
True North.
There you go.
What is it?
The True North trilogy.
True North trilogy.
The third movie is the planned movie Moose Jaws, according to Wikipedia.
Yes, that's it.
Which is described as Jaws with a moose. And now I really want to see this movie. That sounds amazing. It sounds like, Scott, if you're listening, it sounds like in the spirit of Grizzly. So that would be fun.
I love that you brought up Grizzly. Nice work. Yes, it's just, I wonder what it is about, it reminds me of Human Centipede, only in that, like, you're taking humans and creating these, like, just creatures out of them. Like, it reminds me of that, but it's obviously not, to me, as disturbing as Human Centipede. There's definitely a level of like comedy to it, so it's definitely more of like a horror comedy. So that's why I think I suggest it, just pretty much for anyone, because I feel like those kind of movies always seem to do well with like a more, I guess, like mainstream audience. Or is that just me? Like, would you guys recommend this just to anyone?
I mean, I wouldn't, but it's different
Okay.
strokes for different folks. And this movie is so weird. That just, again, it just depends on like who's in your social circle. Like I can't show Tusk to most of the people that I know that aren't like hardcore horror fans.
Okay.
And like I personally don't love this movie either. So it would, and a lot of people I know who have seen it, again, like in my like social circle of like by where I live, like my brother's seen it, like he didn't love it, and we usually like the same things, and so he'd be up for watching something like this. But I can't imagine who else I would show Tusk to. Like my parents wouldn't see it, my friends who live here wouldn't appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, again, it's, you know, but again, it's different types of people. So if you have a lot of people that would like to see Tusk, like that's cool.
Yeah, because it's like it's good bad. It's so bizarre. Like,
oh, it certainly is. I mean, one of the cool things about this, I don't know if you know about the genesis of this movie, but it was a idea that Kevin Smith spitballed on a podcast, and that's what we get, right? So when the movie takes like this completely left turn, like what I loved about this movie is that the first half or first third is like seriously intense, scary, to the point where like a legitimate fear of mine moving forward was going to be that somebody might put me in a walrus suit. And then we see the introduction of Johnny Depp, and then things take this really, like I said, this sharp turn, and we go into this more like comedy parody route. But he managed to have this like serious like Tusk horror film for the first half. So for me, like I said, it's very jarring. But that being said, this also does follow straight in line with what he spitballed on the podcast. So, I mean, he kind of followed what the original creative idea was for this movie. It's not like it was, you know, all random, even though it might appear that way. So even though I didn't enjoy like the entire package, like, you know, I can't complain. I mean, this is like one of the wildest movies, certainly of 2014, but of the 2010s. Like this is definitely a crazy one.
Corpse Club confessional time. I never did see this movie.
It's a safe space.
I feel like a big reason of that is you, Jonathan. Not to pass the blame on to anyone.
No, you can blame me. Yeah.
I remember you went to TIFF to watch the movie's premiere there, and I remember your reaction to it just totally turned me off of it, where I'm like, I was still very curious to see it, but I was just like, oh, I was so excited because I really liked Red State, the other horror movie that Kevin Smith had done a few years before this. And I think that movie had a little bit of comedy in it, but had a lot of like, he took the horror pretty straight on in that too. And the ending is a little love or hate with a lot of people, but overall I really liked Red State. So I really wanted more of that. And then just based on the polarizing reactions to it, I just was never like, I never just felt motivated to go watch it as much as I love Kevin Smith. And I still do want to see it for that reason, just to see what it is like. But I kind of read into it, and I know about the whole kind of movie within a movie, how it totally takes a tonal shift. So it kind of turned me off of it, but I still, out of curiosity, do want to see it eventually. But I remember it was such a huge deal. Like that was the movie of the fall, because it was like Kevin Smith with this really out there horror movie, and it felt like an event movie that you really just had to go experience. And then A24 of all people, of all distributors, they end up releasing it. And of course now we think of A24 as these really thought-provoking horror movies, but you know, 5-6 years ago, A24 was kind of just starting to really get into that, and they hadn't released The Witch yet. And so now it feels like I was almost surprised to go back and look and see that they had released it. So kind of a really interesting trajectory for that movie, and one I still need to get around to seeing eventually.
Whispers.
Yeah, Derek, your list is growing. We're going to have to do, like I said, we'll have to come up with some kind of Corpse Club episode or mechanic that's going to force you to either the revisits or the I've never seen to see them. Face your fears.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to also drink while I do this as well. Because didn't we say it would be like a drinking game?
There was.
Or did I just add that?
No, I don't remember. We did have no. There was a drinking game, but it was part of the episode. It wasn't part of the watch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
You'll drink. You'll drink
list.
either way.
Yeah, either way, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. Okay, so we're moving on. My second and our last pick for 2014 is going to be Lee Janiak's Honeymoon. Tamika, I know that you were going to pick this.
Yes.
And you wrote about this movie too, I believe, for one of our Halloween double features in the past on Daily Dead.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Oh no, I can't think of what I paired it with.
We can look with the power of the internet. We can figure it out. Yeah, Derek's gonna figure it out. But I know that you really like this one, so I'm gonna break some rules here because I can do it. And Tamika, why don't you tell me what you love about Honeymoon?
Oh, thank you. I first of all, I love just how minimal the film is. There's so much that is left to the imagination, and I love that because I think your imagination is always going to be way worse in your mind. Like you're always going to come up with something a lot crazier than if you were just shown it. And are we doing it, like spoilers? Because
I think. Well, what Jonathan, you did a spoiler earlier, right?
I did, but we give the warning. So I would just say that we recommend Honeymoon. A lot of people haven't seen Honeymoon,
right,
and if you don't want to know about Honeymoon and you're listening right now, just skip ahead a few minutes. What do you got, Tamika?
Okay, because I know it's something that the film hides from you for a while, so I didn't know if that was considered, like if that was going to be a spoiler.
Go ahead. We got spoiler tags, so you can talk about it. You got a few minutes.
So you spend so much time trying to figure out, because again, it's this couple and they're on their honeymoon and everything is great, and then it just starts to devolve. But you spend so much time trying to figure out what's really happening. And at least for me, until she started pulling those like the tentacle things out of her body, I wasn't sure if the aliens were real. I didn't know if that really happened or not. And so for me,
yeah.
Oh, whoa, sorry. Who was that? Oh, Derek, I'm sorry.
In the background. I was just saying, it's kind of like the Babadook. Yeah, like the Babadook. You're like, what is real? And then the tentacles come into play.
Yes. So that definitely threw me, because I thought, okay, this is gonna be like we're gonna have to like question some things. Maybe this is all in her mind, but no, aliens. I just, the end is sad. I love them as a couple. They were enjoyable to watch. It's beautifully shot. Yeah, so those are my feelings on Honeymoon.
Yeah, this is one that I've suggested. I don't know if it was on my favorites list. It should have been if it wasn't. And we talked about the Babadook dealing with spoilers. We kind of talked about how it deals with essentially the projection of trauma and loss and illness. And I like how this movie deals with the topics of intimacy between a couple, communication, relationship issues, and it intensifies them. It makes it happen all within, a few days or however long. It takes place over a short period of time, and then has the sci-fi spin to it. But when you look at it, it really is about this couple and these divides that we see. So I really like that they kind of tackle that, and without without going into spoilers, I think, well, we've been spoiling this whole thing, but I'm not going to spoil the very end. I won't spoil the very end, but I like how they deal with the fact that, I guess in some cases that, for relationships, even if it doesn't appear that way right away, that there are always, like, for good relationships, you're always thinking about that other person, right? You always have good intentions. And so even though, things are go a little crazy at the end of this, there are, like I said, I kind of like how it deals with that. Like I said, that communication breakdown, the good intentions, things aren't completely black and white. Things never are black and white, right? We talk about that gray zone. I mean, we see that here. And so, this is a great movie. And again, this was another one that had the benefit of being on Netflix. So I think more people got to see it. I don't know if it's still there, but it was on Netflix for a while. It's
now on Hulu. So if you have a Hulu subscription at the time of this recording, you can watch it. And you're right. I mean, being on a streaming service like it was and is now, it totally gives it that showcase. And it, especially because this is one of those movies where it's a little more independent, even though it did get some decent distribution and really good word of mouth. Like I remember a lot of people talking about this when it first came out. It's harder sometimes to kind of find your little platform in the world of streaming. So the fact that it is still available is really cool, and that it found an audience in 2014. Of course, Rose Leslie, a lot of people know her from Game of Thrones, and Harry Treadaway has been in some really good stuff as well. So it's kind of cool to see them come into this and play these characters, like these new characters. I'm sure it was probably refreshing for them to kind of step away from what they were known for and to do something a little bit different. And yeah, it plays at their expectations. I love the isolated setting of it. I love the fact they're on this honeymoon, but it's, instead of being on a resort somewhere, they're like in this isolated cabin in the woods. I think that's a really cool kind of setting for this love story gone wrong. And this was a good year for alien movies. I mean, there was at least a couple that came out, because the Vicious Brothers wrote a movie called Extraterrestrial, which Colin Minihan directed, one half of the Vicious Brothers. And that also came out in the fall of 2014 and kind of really played with your expectations of UFO movies and had some very interesting scenes with the abduction. So this was a little more of like a quiet horror movie compared to that one. But I think it's super effective. And I think it was a great kind of announcement of Lee Janiak's talents. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, you are.
Yes. I don't have to take a lap of shame. So, and she came onto the scene. Her first feature film was Honeymoon, and it was like, it was just a great kind of coming, like a great party for her to show her talents. And she did some work on Scream, the TV series after this, and she directed an episode of Outcast. And I remember it was one of those things where everyone was wondering, what is she going to direct next? And at one point she was attached to direct the Craft remake. So that would have been kind of interesting. I've always wondered what that movie would have looked like now we're getting it from a different director, but I was like, wonder what it would have been like if she directed that. But now she's attached with some of these Fear Street movies that are coming out somewhere down the line. We've been hearing about those movies for years. So it's kind of that case of, you hear a director comes out with a movie that captures everyone's attention, and then there a lot of time goes by before their next film, because maybe they're waiting for the right project, or they're taking meetings, or things fall through. But I really hope we get to see another movie from her soon, because Honeymoon definitely showed that she has a really good vision for thought-provoking horror. So hopefully it won't be too long before we see like her take on Fear Street or something else.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what she does next. So yeah, and Tamika wanted to do that one as well, and we found out that that I had that one on the list. So anyway, it's back to you, Tamika, with Honeymoon. And actually, this works out because I didn't do this intentionally, but we were talking about whether or not this was on my favorites list. So while you guys were talking, I was searching to see if it was on my favorites list for 2014, and it wasn't because I'm a terrible person. But there were 2 movies that we have not discussed. So I'm going to break some more rules, and we're going to talk about 2 other movies. We're going to throw out TV. We've been talking about TV, and it's like, oh, well, this season of The Walking Dead, and it's just one more season. Or we talk about like the second season of another TV series. So I'm throwing TV out. I'm throwing video games out. What came out that was big? We'll do it quickly. Alien Isolation. What else came out that was horror? Oh, The Evil Within. That was a fun one. I recommend playing that.
Oh yeah, that was a big. Was that
Japanese horror going through Bethesda? Yeah.
Like, some of the Silent Hill team was on that one.
Yes.
Okay. Because it definitely had
actually it was the original Resident Evil team.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so we have those 2, but I'm skipping around because I want to get back to some movies, some horror movies. So what we talked about, and Derek and I talked about this because we thought it would happen, is that as we've seen, like researching some of this, some of the Google dates are kind of off. And so we thought we might lose like a 2013 movie that was actually released in 2014, but searches 2013 in Google. And we did, Derek, we did. We missed 2.
Okay.
So
are they big ones too?
Yeah, they are. I can't not talk about them. So the one we're going to start talking about is Only Lovers Left Alive. Only Lovers Left Alive, Tilda Swinton, Tom Hiddleston, one of the best vampire movies of the 2010s. Maybe some people might consider it one of the best vampire movies ever made. I wouldn't argue with you. I don't know who I'm arguing with, but I wouldn't argue with you. The only reason I'm saying it's not the best is because everybody knows I love What We Do in the Shadows so much, but they are 2 completely different movies where I feel like What We Do in the Shadows is like a love letter to vampire movies and also has killer comedy. Only Lovers Left Alive is its own beast, and it, you know, we basically see these drug addicts. You know, it almost, you know, it doesn't have to be vampirism. They could have been aliens or robots or drug addicts. Like, it could have been anything, which is a sign of a good story. And we deal with these characters that are kind of, you know, immortal, or at least they have a long life, because as we know, vampires can die. And, you know, a real haunting soundtrack, fantastic performances. I can't say enough good things about this movie. And this one was kind of just like thrown into a limited theatrical release. I believe Sony distributed the movie, and it was just a very limited theatrical release. And now we haven't really seen it push through VOD. This is one of those that kind of got lost. And so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but have either of you seen it, and what do you think?
I have seen this movie, and I like you, I really enjoy it. I love Tilda Swinton. She's just, can she do no wrong? I feel like I suggest at least one of her movies every podcast because I mentioned The Beach. But, you know, I'm noticing that from this conversation, a lot of the films that came out in the year 2014 are these like really beautiful, like small, like little slivers of the lives of like maybe 2 or 3 people. And Only Lovers Left Alive is just a continuation of that, you know, because it's really these 2 characters, and you get to unpack so much of their stuff. There's a lot of that too. A lot of people having to deal with heavy things. I wonder, like, what would have spawned that? Like, what was going on in 2014, or maybe a few years before that? I don't know.
A very contemplative year.
Yeah. A lot of like reflection. No, but it is such a beautiful film. And again, I'm going to pull a Derek. I have not seen it since it was released. So it's going on the list for sure. But no, I love the movie.
And how about you, Derek? Have you seen this one?
I'm gonna pull another Derek and say I have not. I did not see this, and I missed it. Like you said, I missed it when it came out. I know it had that buzz from the festival run in like 2013, and then it had that limited theatrical in 2014, and the VOD release happened, and I just didn't get to it. But I actually really enjoyed The Dead Don't Die for the most part, at least the first 2/3 of it. The zombie movie that Jim Jarmusch did this year. So I'm extra compelled to go back and watch this movie.
We compel you too.
This was another one. I feel like I'm being summoned from the grave to do some dark deeds. This is like, it took me a while to watch What We Do in the Shadows, another movie that you heavily recommended, Jonathan. So I should just go full circle and watch the other vampire movie that you recommended from that time period and get around to watching this.
Yeah, so I want to hear what you think. So yeah, let me know. And also, I do want to call out that Anton Yelchin has a great role in this movie as well. And so, and you know, because when people talk about his roles, I don't hear this one come up enough. And again, it's probably because this movie is just underseen. But he plays such a great character. There's, he's kind of. He's a fan of Tom Hiddleston's character. And there's this scene where he kind of tries to fit in with them and at a bar. And it's just, there's just these little character moments and these little moments where he shines. And it's just, like I said, he helps make this movie pop. So like I said, and John Hurt's in this as well. There's a really good cast.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Jim Jarmusch gets really good casts in his movies from just looking at his filmography. Like, a lot of people love to work with him. So good for the Hangout movie vibe.
Yep. And then our next movie, which there's no way I'm not talking about this one, Snowpiercer. So Snowpiercer was a 2014 release. See, what happened was, if you type it in, it comes in 2013 because it was released in South Korea in 2013.
That's right.
And that's why we get in trouble with that one. So,
and I think it might be considered more of like sci-fi too. Like, I could see it being classified.
Oh no, it is. I'm cheating. So,
okay.
Yeah, no, I knew
it.
Yeah, I always cheat. It's, you can classify. I mean, there are horrific things in this movie. This is what I talk about, right? Like, if you told me this was sci-fi, I would never argue. But if you also told me this was horror, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. You could tell me it was a post-apocalyptic thriller. I'd be like, I get that. You could tell me it was an action, post-apocalyptic action movie. So, like, I'm what do you call it? I am open to as many classifications as anyone wants to give a movie.
Nice. Yeah, no, I mean, I would be horrified if I found myself in this situation.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
just seeing what they eat on that train is one of the most horrific things I've seen in a movie in that decade. And it's something that, like, my sister and I will still talk about, and my brother-in-law will still talk about this movie after watching it just the one time all those years ago. And that first year, like 2014 is when we must have watched it, maybe 2015, but it was just it left such an indelible impression with how dark it went and how nobody is safe in that movie. And there really is like no happy ending necessarily for anybody. Like, everyone is just so scarred by their experiences before you even start the movie. So it's like, it's just such a painful movie to watch in a lot of ways, but it's so brilliantly executed that you can't help but marvel at it. And I always admired that Chris Evans did that movie because it was right in the middle of his peak Captain America time, where everyone kind of knew him as this Marvel guy. And then here he was playing this like really complex antihero who does some heroic things, but also does some really questionable things in the movie. Like, that character is like the definition of an anti-hero who makes very flawed choices. Some of them good, some of them bad. And it's a great performance. So I love I love that movie. I don't know how many times I can watch it because it is so disturbing, but it's certainly one that I'll never forget. And now we have a Snowpiercer series coming to TBS this year. So
it was originally TNT. They moved it to TBS. I missed it.
Yes, it was originally TNT. Now it's on TBS, and it's already been renewed for a second season. Jennifer Connelly's in it. Daveed Diggs is in it. So I'll be interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I've heard the announcement before. I don't know necessarily how I feel about it. I know there was wasn't Scott Derrickson associated with that, and then directed the pilot, and then they either reshot or heavily or they either reshot it completely or heavily reshot it. I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely some creative differences, and he's still involved as like a producer, I believe, but he's not the director of the first episode anymore.
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes that happens. Sometimes people have different visions, and that still works out. So I'll just say I'm curious to see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, this movie's great. I mean, the fact that the fact that Chris Evans is in it, like you mentioned, I mean, it's just for him, it was branching out. He didn't need to do it in terms of, he didn't do it for popularity. He wanted to branch out and take on different roles. And I also think because he did take on this role, it'll attract more people to this movie. It's like, well, let me see what else Captain America was in. What's this Snowpiercer movie? I find it interesting that this also stars Tilda Swinton and John Hurt. So yay for the both of them. And haven't been in this and Only Lovers Left Alive. It came out in the same year. We know Ed Harris is in this. But yeah, I mean, this is a. We don't get a lot of great sci-fi these days, or at least I feel like we don't. Like the outpouring we get usually is horror. I think it's because of budget, right? It's easier to make a horror movie. You can make it for a small budget. You can keep it in a house. You don't have to build a spaceship. You don't have to, create a new planet. And I think that like barrier to entry just means we get less sci-fi movies. But this is one that is again, another one of best of the decade, best of the 2000s total. I mean, this is high up on my list when we're talking about, sci-fi movies, in recent memory.
Yeah, you're right. We don't get as much of those types of movies. It feels like the 70s, 80s, even the 90s was more of a showcase for sci-fi. And now it's kind of taken a backseat, which is a little odd to me since we're kind of living in we're in an era where sci-fi is super relevant with technology, and some of the stuff that was sci-fi is now reality. So there's a lot that you can do with that. But it is really refreshing when stuff like this comes out, and it almost kind of foreshadowed Train to Busan in a way. Like it feels like Snowpiercer definitely had an influence on other movies that came out after it, and certainly kind of raised the bar when it came to this type of a film, which kind of it stands on its own, but it certainly, I think, has an influence, whether people maybe realize it or not.
Yeah, I would do the Train to Busan Snowpiercer double feature. Didn't even think about it. There you go. Thanks, Derek.
And then throw in Terror Train for the third film.
There you go. That'll be, you know what? You almost have your next drive-in marathon.
Ooh, yeah. Murder on the Orient Express, and we're good to go. A little less genre on that one, though.
Hey, you can stand by it. I'll back you up. So we, I think we made it through. We made it through 2014. There's a lot, and that's what we're finding, right? As we go through the 2010s, just the amount of genre content increases. We could be here for hours more, just diving through it. But I think it was fun to revisit, look back at some of these, especially because some of them I haven't talked about or I haven't watched in a little bit. So, and finding too, I mean, what I'm excited about are these, like, it's like kind of like when The Shining first came out, like not everybody loved it, or The Thing obviously didn't do well when it came out at the box office. Prince of Darkness is finding new life. Day of the Dead. I'm curious to see what movies from the 2010s are going to be, the 2010s version of, Day of the Dead or The Thing. So we'll see. Maybe it's Tusk. Maybe it's As Above, So Below. I think Annabelle is kind of going to be, famous kind of forever because it's part of, you know, the Conjuring universe, which is, you know, essentially Warner Brothers Universal Monsters. But yeah, and then, you know, talking about movies like, you know, Snowpiercer or Only Lovers Left Alive, which, you know, not a lot of people had a chance to see. So anyway, hopefully we had some picks that you haven't seen, and you'll check them out. Let us know what you thought. As always, we want to hear from you. And so with that, this latest episode of Corpse Club comes to an end. I want to thank Brian, our spectacular engineer, for helping us out each and every episode. And as always, we want to thank our listeners, including those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. You go to corpseclub.com and you can find out how to become a member. We have all kinds of different membership options. You can pick an episode topic, you can get a Corpse Club t-shirt and pin, and there's more. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com to check out our latest episode and our backlog of episodes. You can also rate and review us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review really helps, so please take a minute and rate and review us. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. We're also now on YouTube, if that is your destination of choice. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contactcorpseclub.com, or we're on Twitter at Daily Dead News, or at Corpse Club, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.